Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show!
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 101. Oh, this is going to be different, odd, strange episode. I know, right? Abnormal is my normal. But seriously, today I am going to be taking some segments from the Upper-Downriver Right to Life, Michigan, Upper-Downriver, Michigan, Right to Life, May 17th, Intro to Pro-Life Culture event that we had. I can't put all the speakers in. There were way too many of them. I'm just going to be, let me see, 5 segments, which is already going to take us up to an hour. So there are a total of 14 videos, however, from the May 17 Intro to Pro-Life Culture event. You can go to udmi-rtl.org. Again, that's udmi-rtl.org, and click on the News tab. From there, you'll see the Intro to Pro-Life Culture event videos page. From there, up at the top for now, I've managed the website, so as new pages, as new events, as new things come up, I push the news down and always put the latest news up at the top. But for now, as of when this is airing, Saturday, May the 24th, the original air date, udmi-rtl.org, under News, the Intro to Pro-Life Culture event videos link is indeed at the top as of this date. More things will come. At any rate, since those are going to take almost an hour to get through those videos, if you want to watch behind the scenes, or again, you can see all 14 videos at the udmi-rtl.org/news to get to the page. Right, go to the main page and news, and you'll see it there. So, instead of me rambling more, let's get to those segments.
For upcoming events. So with further ado, I want to introduce Marsha Pysz. She's one of our board members. She's been a long-time member of Right to Life of Michigan and Lincoln Park Right to Life, which consolidated in with us. And we are so happy to have her share with us the history of the pro-life movement.
Thank you, Debbie. Hello, everyone. Welcome. And I am here to start off the intro to pro-life culture with a little history lesson. And don't groan. I know that history can be boring to people, but I'm trying to make it short, sweet, and interesting. We'll see how I do by the end. I want to begin by saying that the pro-life movement recognizes the inherent value of every human being, regardless of your stage of development. And the pro-life movement's history is one of a modern-day David fighting for life affirmation against a modern-day Goliath that promotes a culture of death. But why should we know the pro-life history? And I would answer that question by echoing Edmund Burke's statement. Those who do not know history are destined to repeat it. And repeat it we are. Abortion is not a modern phenomenon. It's at least 2 millennia old. The ancient cultures practiced abortion, and I'm talking about the Greeks and the Romans. They used to use plant-based abortifacients to abort fetuses in the womb. And then when babies were born, if they did not want them for whatever reason, they practiced infanticide. And infanticide was the leaving of the newborn out in the open to die of exposure or possibly animal attacks. So back in ancient times, life was disposable and cheap. And we've come full circle in our modern enlightened days, and life is again disposable and cheap. The early Christian church took a counterculture view, decrying these practices, and by the 2nd century, Christian theologians condemned abortion as a form of child killing. But this back and forth debate and practicing of abortion continued throughout the centuries. But in the 19th century, scientists began to better understand fetal development due to the new science of embryology. This new knowledge promoted and caused the medical profession to lobby for abortion prohibition. But however, the 1930s and 40s ushered in the philosophy of a culture of death, and it gained ground in our society due to the efforts of people like Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood. She devoted her life to the cause of birth control, sex education, and population control. Planned Parenthood became the predominant provider of abortions for the African American community, and it still is today. Planned Parenthood also began setting up its clinics in the poorest sections of our towns and cities, targeting the poor and minorities. In contrast, the pro-life view began to organize in the 1930s. During these years, it was predominantly a Catholic movement. Catholics held that abortion was wrong due to the grounds that it violated church teaching and the desire for a strong social safety net for the poor. In 1968, Monsignor James T. Pugh started the National Right to Life organization, and that was at the behest of Catholic bishops. Again, contrary to the pro-life movement beginning, we have Dr. JLenardDetroit, the founder of the National Abortion Rights Action League, and Betty Friedan, who was the founder of the National Organization of Women in the 70s, joining forces and linking abortion to feminism. It was their contention that women could not be equal with men unless they had control of their bodies and their pregnancies. But it's ironic, considering that in the turn of the century, women were very staunchly pro-life over feminists. I'm talking about Sarah Norton, Elizabeth Stanton, and well-known Susan B. Anthony. They were all staunchly pro-life. In fact, Susan B. Anthony called abortion child murder. But pro-abortion groups began using tactics such as promoting the propaganda through falsified statistics and manipulated language. They joined forces with the mainstream media and disseminated disinformation through print, TV, radio, and today, of course, they are using social media and they are using podcasts. Pro-abortionists use slogans such as "My body, my choice," "It's a blob of tissue," "Abortion is healthcare," and "Abortion is a human right," in order to sway public opinion. Lastly, they also began to try to infiltrate our educational system, not only in the higher forms of learning like colleges, but K through 12. And they did this because the public schools allowed Planned Parenthood to come in and speak to our children about their philosophies and their views. They used Planned Parenthood material in the sex education classes, and teachers who bought into the pro-death philosophy were also using them like in humanity courses as well. It should be noted that the pro-life movement has not been given the same opportunity to share its speakers and materials with our youth. Protestants began joining the pro-life movement in the 60s and the 70s due to pro-abortion legislation being passed in many of the states, and New York became actually an abortion mecca during this time because it did not have residency requirements. That meant that anyone from throughout the country could come to New York and get an abortion, no questions asked. And so during the 60s and later, they were performing over 200,000 abortions a year. That's the kind of thing that caused the Reverend Jerry Falwell, a Baptist pastor, and you may know him better as the founder of the Moral Majority, to lead evangelicals into the pro-life movement. And a curious thing happened too in the mid-70s. Dr. JLenardDetroit, the co-founder of the National Abortion Rights Action League, and I kind of consider him the father of the pro-death movement in the States because he had performed over 60,000 abortions himself. He even aborted one of his own children. He became staunchly pro-life. And the reason that he became pro-life was because of the advancements in ultrasound technology. He valiantly fought the philosophy of death through speaking engagements, films, and books until his death. In 1974, he wrote, "There is no longer serious doubt in my mind that human life exists within the womb from the very onset of pregnancy, despite the fact that the nature of the intrauterine life has been the subject of considerable dispute in the past." Well, that's a little information about the national pro-life movement. Let's turn our attention to the state. In 1972, Right to Life in Michigan was formed by Jane Muldoon. At this time, it was called Voice for the Unborn. It had 115 local affiliates and a membership of over 110,000 members. These people came together to fight the proposed Proposal B, which would have legalized abortion in Michigan up to 20 weeks of pregnancy. Proposal B went down to defeat, but unfortunately that became a moot point because in 1973 the Supreme Court passed Roe v. Wade and made abortion a constitutional right and nullified the state's anti-abortion laws. In 1974, the Voice of the Unborn became Michigan Citizens for Life. Now it had 9 geographic locations within the state, and its headquarters is in Grand Rapids. By 1979, they changed the name to Right to Life of Michigan, and it is still headquarters in Grand Rapids today. What was once largely a Catholic movement is now a racially and religiously diverse movement. Various Christian denominations, secularists, minorities all work together to educate and to promote pro-life legislation. It's also encouraging to see that our students are beginning to form their own pro-life groups. Right to Life of Michigan has MyGen, and nationally there are Students for Life, and there are other organizations as well. President Reagan said, "We can't diminish the value of one category of human life, the unborn, without diminishing the value of a life, period. Pro-lifers are life affirmers. Two of the pro-life movement's most effective strategies are the implementation of embrace-based programs that usually deal mostly sometimes in churches and with younger women. In CPCs, which are crisis pregnancy centers, they deal with women of all ages. In these CPCs, we have the pervasive power of 3D ultrasounds, personal mentoring, and the offering of material resources to help the 2,500 plus centers convince numerous women to choose life for their unborn children. We also are very lucky in that our crisis pregnancy centers usually outnumber the abortion centers by 3 to 1. But the pro-life movement doesn't stop there. It offers help and recovery to those who have had or have been touched by abortion. There are just a few of the support organizations that may be familiar. Abortion Recovery International, Rachel's Vineyard, and Focused on the Family's Passages of Hope. There are many other organizations as well, but we are here to reach out to those who've had abortions, not just for those who are considering it. Pro-life people everywhere are people that are ordinary, like myself, like you and I, moms and dads, grandparents, students, white and blue-collar workers. They are from all economic spheres and races. President John F. Kennedy once said, "One person can make a difference, and everyone should try." And that has been a rallying cry for the pro-life movement, for us to join and be advocates for those who can't speak for themselves. Amber Roseboom, the Right to Life Initiative's current president, said, "As you join us in our life-affirming work, the most important thing you can do is equip yourself to engage in the debate in this new era. To compassionately share the message of life, the other choice, with your friends, family, and social circles. Offer open arms and hearts to post-aborted women seeking healing and a new path forward. We are not here to judge. We are here to offer help before an abortion or after." I've been talking about the pro-life movement and the culture of life philosophy. I've shown that this movement ministers to people directly, focuses on education, and fights in the legislative arena. But what exactly do I mean by the culture of life? It is the life-affirming belief that every individual is sacred and special, no matter the age, the ethnicity, circumstance, or disability. People are not objects to be thrown away or disposed of because of some arbitrary criteria that changes from person to person and minute to minute. Rather, life is to be appreciated from womb to tomb, and it is that belief that pro-lifers want to see disseminate into our society so that the future generations coming up respect and revere life rather than think it's something that is easily to just be gotten rid of for whatever circumstance. That has been the historical philosophy of the pro-life movement and the driving concept of the movement today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marsha. That gives a great background. I learned some new things too, so you're welcome to take a look at them at the break. I want to introduce MJ. Mary Jane Favant is a nurse and well qualified. She's much more than just a nurse. She's a physician's assistant? No, what are you? Nurse practitioner. I'm sorry, there are too many designations nowadays in the medical field. And she had a wonderful PowerPoint, and we're so disappointed that we were here last week, the TV worked, we figured out what we needed, and today the devil was here. So I'm going to pass it off to you. She's also, I think this is important, she's also the manager of the gift shop at the Fatima Shrine in Riverview, and since she's retired from nursing. And that's a wonderful place to visit if you need some religious gifts or books. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Can you all hear me in the back? God bless you. Okay, great. Debbie, thank you. And let me just mention about Manny. He didn't mention the mom. She graduated from Madonna University. Just, when was that?
Oh my gosh, it was about 2 years
2 years
after.
ago.
2 years after she being reborn.
Well, clearly, anything is possible for God and love, right? Amen. So, okay. I want to thank Debbie and Upper-Downriver for the opportunity to speak. I am not the be-all and end-all of information, and my disclaimer is my practice, 45 years in healthcare, has been predominantly in the care of older adults. That does not, but let me tell you what, there's remarkable similarities between the beginning of life and the end of life in ways, shapes, and forms. Today I'm speaking to the issue clearly of threats to human life, and we know that in this case it deals with abortion, assisted suicide, and yes, even in vitro fertilization. So I know that might sound interesting or kind of bizarre, but I'll explain as I go along. The one thing that I want people to understand is nowadays out there in the media, there's a lot of terms that are thrown around that can be extremely confusing. Clearly there are actions that either are unplanned or unintended, and they lead to an infant's death or an adult's death. Okay, those we are not able to control. So the issue is, it is the intentionality of the act or the procedure. When we speak of abortion, and there are many ways that happens, we're speaking about an act or procedure with the willful intent to cause the death of an unborn child between fertilization and natural birth. Assisted suicide is an act or procedure with the willful intent to cause death to an individual desiring to end their life by prescription. That's not suicide, okay?
So those are two distinguishing features. It's the intent of the action or procedure. Now, when we talk about unintentional, unplanned, there are a number of acts or events that occur that would result in the end of, let's say, a child's life. One of them, and you heard the overall, the expression of a miscarriage, correct? Yep. Okay. Now, if I Google right now, and you can do that on your phone, if you Google, for example, the term miscarriage, it's going to say spontaneous abortion. Okay? That's incorrect. It's rather interesting, and one of my other hacks that I wore through my professional career, working in the operating room for a short time early, the term was frequently used on a pre-op diagnosis when a mother had had a miscarriage, okay, and they needed to perform a procedure so that there were any residual tissue left that would be removed. It would always be boarded as an incomplete abortion. That made no sense to me whatsoever, instead of calling it a miscarriage. I have a feeling, I have my biases that suggest that it's probably related to insurances and what will be paid. So anyway, another type of miscarriage would be the ectopic pregnancy, correct? Okay. That is the unborn child actually implants outside of the womb or the uterus. Frequently, they implant in the fallopian tube, okay? That tract that delivers that unfertilized oocyte or egg from the ovary to the fallopian tube, once fertilized, then to the uterine wall, okay? Ectopic pregnancies are really scary, and they're very serious. Why? They often go undetected, and I'll get into that a little bit because right now, especially with our influx and incredible numbers of abortions occurring with the abortion pills, one of the safety features or Radler's risk evaluation and mitigation strategies that was historically used is no longer required, and that was a ultrasound to determine gestational age and also where the child was. So in an ectopic pregnancy, it's usually the mom who realizes that something is not quite right. And if sometimes they don't, and that child can grow, but it's been implanted in the fallopian tube. So what will happen? The fallopian tube does not expand. The child does not get the type of nutrition that they need in that section, and the child dies. Or the tube ruptures, mother dies and bleeds to death. Okay, it's an emergency. It requires immediate surgical intervention. So those are miscarriages, unplanned, unintended. Usually, we've heard that if someone has experienced a miscarriage, if it's less than 12 weeks, frequently mom can pass and eventually get through that. Sometimes not able to. Sometimes they'll even get medicine to facilitate movement of that deceased child through the system so that it can leave the body. Again, if that doesn't work, then they'll usually do something like a surgical procedure, such as they call it dilatation and curettage, a DNC. Okay. Now, usually if it's a late miscarriage, and actually miscarriages will usually happen, like 2/3 of them happen within the first 6 to 10 weeks of pregnancy. Surgical management for a late miscarriage, which would be 12 to 20 weeks, imagine that. 21 weeks usually is the state of viability for an infant, right? They can survive outside the womb. But surgical management in that case, when the child is dead, they've done an ultrasound, there's no heartbeat, et cetera, they would do a DNC, that's the usual treatment. And again, as I said before, the ectopic is just, they usually do a laparoscope, and what then happens is the tube clearly is damaged. So mom's risk of not being able to have children, unfortunately, doesn't increase because that one tube, at least, granted tube, that one tube becomes damaged. So the chances of future oocytes coming through are going to be reduced. Okay. Now, abortion. And this I'm going to break down into a couple of categories in terms of what trimester are we talking about. When we talk about first trimester, what is the most important method of abortion these days, unfortunately? What? Abortion RU 486, that's what it was when it first came into the United States. It was originally in Europe forever before a certain administration brought it over and encouraged its use. It is currently now the primary method for medical abortion, or for abortion period. It's called a medical abortion. In other words, over 50% of abortions nowadays are via the abortion pill, which is the utilization of two medicines. The typical protocol is it's mifepristone, which used to be called Mifeprex, and that's a brand name, but now it's strictly generic. Mifepristone, which is a 200 milligram tablet that's taken first, and then within 24 to 48 hours later, they take another agent called misoprostol, which is 800 milligrams inside the mouth, probably 24 to 48 hours later. Now, mifepristone, it blocks hormones that will nourish and feed the placenta for the child, right? And what hormone, ladies, does that? Progesterone. That makes the lining of the womb very fertile and ready to receive the child so that the embryo, the fertilized child, implants, begins to grow and is nourished. Mifepristone blocks the hormone that feeds that child. And when that is taken, the child dies. 2 days later, or 1 to 2 days later, that individual then takes the misoprostol. It used to be called, FYI, Cytotec. I remember that back in 1978. It was one of the popular drugs that was used for the treatment of GI ulcers from using non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen. Because what it did is it helped to reduce the secretion of obviously acid, but it also helped to prevent, it lined the stomach and prevented the ulcer from occurring. It had major side effects then, and it was taken off the market way back then. Because one of the side effects happens to be what the drug did. It not only helped prevent the ulcer, but it caused severe abdominal cramping, unbelievable cramping. It could cause arrhythmias, heart irregular beats. So it was removed. It couldn't be given to pregnant women or women of childbearing age because of the potential for birth defects. Okay? So now this is an agent that is being used. Again, the mifepristone stops the progesterone. The misoprostol causes the uterus to contract, to expel. This procedure is usually now, unfortunately, alone. This woman is alone. And it's sad because very serious side effect is excessive bleeding, can be infection. One of the things that the government in its profound wisdom, and I say that with my tongue in cheek, is that years ago when mifepristone and mifeprex hit the market, there were safety guidelines that were called Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategies, REMS. And there were such things as, okay, if a young woman a woman wanted a medical abortion, this is called a medical abortion, they had to go see a provider. It had to be determined what the gestational age of that infant was, and how do they do that generally? They can do measurements, but generally speaking, ultrasound. And in those situations, too, they were able to determine where the child was implanted. Was it in the uterus or was it in the fallopian tube? Okay. Now, plus they received instruction, and when they took that first mifepristone, or the only mifepristone, it was in the presence of a provider in a clinic, right? That's all gone. That's all gone. The only thing now that's required is that the provider be certified and licensed. My goodness. That they do a consent, which is all online. They don't have to go in and see anybody to receive those abortion pills. That prescription is called into a pharmacy. Now, the pharmacy has to be certified to dispense those as well, okay? But they can dispense them. And that person walks out with these killers in their hand, and they're going home to be home by themselves to go through this abortion in their own home, okay? It's used up to 10 weeks that a person is pregnant. 10 weeks. Originally, it was only 7 weeks. But I think COVID and with the shutdown of everything, nobody could get their pills, so they said, oh, well, okay, we'll bump it out, and you don't have to come in here because everything's closed down, we don't want you to get COVID or whatever. That was part of the way that these REMS were eliminated. Side effects, common, heavy bleeding. There have been a number of deaths, and it's very, very, very sad. For example, there was a report done by the Food and Drug Administration, the GAO, the government, GAO, Government Accountability Office, thank you. Or there's a government, thank you, one saying. This is way back in March 2018. And just to give you, I'm so sad I don't have the screen, but to give you an idea, from 2000 to 2012, deaths, let's put this, adverse events reported in, let's say that's 10 years, 12 years. Number of cases had adverse events for 2,740. Now that's adverse events that were, quote, reported. Okay, we have to keep that in mind. In that situation, the number of deaths were 14. Hospitalizations, over almost 800. Blood loss requiring transfusion, almost 500. Infections, ectopic pregnancies, severe infections. In 5 years, 2012 to 2017, the number of adverse events went down. Again, reported adverse events were like 1439. Hospitalizations and deaths decreased. But again, that's a 5-year period compared to a 10-year. And again, whether they were reported or not. So it's something that's incredibly serious. And it's not all that it's blown up to be. Now, in terms of a surgical abortion, within the first trimester, usually there are only two options. One is called a suction curettage, or a vacuum aspiration. It's probably, in terms of surgical procedures, it's the one that's performed the majority of time, probably 64%. I avoid, and I do not want to go through the bloody details of how that occurs. You can let your mind think about it, okay? The child, unfortunately, is torn up with this procedure and then aspirated. Okay. Huge side effect here is perforating the uterine wall, and what happens with that? Massive bleeding. That requires immediate surgery or immediate access to an ER. Another procedure, probably not uncommonly used in gynecological care, is a DNC, dilatation and curettage. And when it's used for non-abortion reasons, obviously there's appropriateness for it. But again, we get back to that issue of the intent of this is to cease a child's life. Now in the second and third trimesters, when we look at abortions, there's something probably from 12 to 24 weeks, we look at something called a dilatation and evacuation. Unfortunately, this is known as a dismemberment abortion. One of the things that has to be done at the end of this procedure is that, dear Lord, all the baby's body parts have to be assembled so that people know what remains inside mom. I can't even imagine that. That happens to be, unfortunately, the preferred second trimester procedure when we're talking about a surgical abortion. Causes profuse bleeding and infection. Another form of a surgical, if you will, abortion that is really not used too much anymore because thankfully someone was bright enough to realize that there are too many side effects and health risks, not only to the baby but to the mother. But anyone remember the saline abortions? Okay. That was literally, they poisoned the baby with saline. Partial birth abortion, that was another form. Fortunately in the United States it's not legal except it's permitted if it's absolutely necessary to save the life of a pregnant woman. And that's for 20 weeks and beyond. And remember, medical viability is usually 21 weeks. And I've seen babies with 15 and 16 weeks viability, or born at 15 or 16 weeks and survive and grow. So keep that in mind. The last type of surgical abortion is one that's used generally in IVF. It's called fetal reduction. Okay? That's obviously, because as we go through that, you realize that in IVF, so many of the moms, unfertilized eggs, they're called oocytes, are removed, probably on average about 15, okay? They are then fertilized by dad, they become an embryo. They're implanted back into mom. Before they're implanted, frequently they'll do pre-implantation genetic testing. Here we go, it's called selective, who do I want to have as a child? I don't mean to sound glib, but that just drives me crazy. So on top of that, the strongest appearing embryos are planted, 4 or 5, On average they remove 15 of mom's eggs for fertilization. So now if we have actually 3 or 4 of these beautiful infant children that have been planted, frequently mom or dad are encouraged to reduce the number to protect the viability of some of the other sisters or brothers, so to speak. So unfortunately, that's why IVF is included in this talk about health risks to life, because it's those beautiful children that are not implanted or are reduced or eliminated that the sad future happens. IVF, of course, originally occurred because of clearly issues with infertility, and that is a whole day's discussion, and we'll go into that. Many of the reasons why it's not, let's put it this way, it's a challenge and it's not necessarily a pleasant experience, because not only is it the procedure itself to receive or to retrieve the oocytes of a process of implantation, medicines that have to be used in order to ensure that the embryos are securely implanted into mom's womb. These procedures can cost an arm and a leg, upwards of $20,000 or more if there's medicines required. So, and the outcome, I know some really good places that I've seen and read about are after multiple IVF cycles can deliver maybe 50% of the time a live birth, one live birth. Usually after one cycle, it can be maybe up to 20%. One live birth after all those. So it gets pretty rough. It gets really brutal. What happens to those beautiful children? They're discarded, is one thing. They're cryopreserved. And some estimates in the U.S. are over 600,000 of these children in these states are frozen. They can be given to other couples, but it's very rare. They can be given for scientific research. And they call something compassionate transfer. Has anybody ever heard about that? Understandably, IVF can have some very significant moral concerns, and it's been known that compassionate transfers is when the remaining embryos, all of them that have been retrieved from the mother, originally fertilized and are implanted, all of them, the remaining are then implanted, they will not live, mom will miscarry and be able to get rid of them naturally. That's called a compassionate transfer. I know. Fortunately nowadays there's something called macro technology, and what's happening with, at least I'm just going to mention this, because there's resources all over the place on the internet. Much of infertility has never been truly explored, diagnosed properly. There are so many reasons that moms and dads have not had the offering of trying to find out what's wrong, and they've only been directed to IVF. So macro technology is quite different. Read about it. It's changing people's lives. So FYI. Last but not least, let me just say a couple words on assisted suicide. It goes by many names, and it was originally talked about back in the, I want to say 1890s or something like that. Excuse me, 1870s, I haven't looked this up. It was a non-physician who thought that they should be able to use anesthesia to terminate or get rid of patients or kill patients that were not contributory to society. Yes, that was happening. We all remember Dr. Orpheum, okay? Oh, yeah. The only reason he was jailed is because he was very egotistical, and he filmed himself actually delivering the killing dose of medicine to those gentlemen in the back of his vans. That was the reason he was convicted and went to jail. That's the only reason. You'll hear the term, is it PAS, physician-assisted suicide? You'll hear the term MAID, medical assistance in dying. You'll hear the term assisted suicide. You'll hear the term euthanasia or mercy killing. Let me say this. Euthanasia, mercy killing, is outlawed in the United States. It's available in other countries, but it's outlawed here because what it literally means is that I, as a provider, have to physically walk over and give you the dose of the medicine that kills you. Okay, that's, thank God, not allowed. Okay, I'm not saying it won't be, but it could be. The other one is physician-assisted, medical assistance in dying. The individual has to be able to take this cocktail, bitter cocktail of a variety of medications, which basically dull the senses, put them to sleep, and eventually cause their heart to stop. That's the long and the short. Nowadays, we're finding instances where individuals, for example, there was this case in California where a woman, this is out there in the media, this is a while back, who was diagnosed with cancer, went to go have approval for her treatment, and was offered by the insurance company assisted living, or assisted suicide versus the treatment first. Wow. Imagine who's pulling strings and has, meat in that game, so to speak. So it's a real unfortunate issue. There are now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 states in the United States where assisted suicide is absolutely legal. There are probably an additional 15 to 20 that have had some form of a legislation cross over the desks of their legislators. Fortunately, they haven't approved it, but do not be surprised when it comes to Michigan. Do not be surprised. Thank you.
So much information. Thank you, MJ. Thank you. I just thought I'd add a couple. I'm too close to the speaker. I thought I would add a couple of definitions. She mentioned NAPRO technology. That stands for natural procreation. And you can get more information. Natural Family Planning, Fertility Science Institute. There are many available. Also, how many have seen the movie Unplanned? Abby Johnson's story. This gives you a personal experience of the abortion pill. So Abby Johnson took the abortion pill, and that experience is on the movie. Right to Life of Michigan has the DVD of the movie that you can borrow from the Right to Life of Michigan Resource Center, which, if you're not familiar with it, the address is on the newsletter in your blue packet, and it's on 20th and Eureka here in Wyandotte. And so you can borrow it for a group showing or take it home for your personal. Bring it back so somebody else can borrow it. So she was mentioning the abortion reversal procedure is now available, and about 60% or more of those opportunities, someone realizes after they took the first pill for a pill abortion, they realize they should not have done that. And doctors said, if we can replace the progesterone that has been starved from the baby, perhaps the pregnancy can continue, and it has worked in at least 60% of the times that it has been tried. So there's so much. Okay, our second half will be faster than the first half. And I'm introducing Bruce Fleury, author, who is here, and he brought his book, The Negro Project, and he is from Wham Radio. Come ahead, Bruce. And everybody take your seats, please.
Well, good morning, Debbie. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks, Joe. One of our avid listeners to the Abolitionist Roundtable of Michigan, plus a few folks from the Ann Arbor area who came today specifically because they heard me plugging this meeting here today. So, yes, my name is Bruce Fleury. I am the author of a book which has been out since October of 2015. It's called The Negro Project, Margaret Sanger's Diabolical, Duplicitous, Dangerous, Disastrous, and Deadly Plan for Black America. And boy, is it ever a deadly plan for Black America. And a little background on this. used to listen to a broadcast on 1400 WDTK on Saturday mornings from 9 to 10 called Joshua's Trail. And Joshua's Trail was headed up by a wonderful gentleman by the name of Pastor Levon Ewell, who was the president of the National Black Pro-Life Congress at the time. He has since retired, and now, and that's how I got kind of involved in sort of a sideline talk show host and that type of thing at Wham Radio, which I've been associated with now for the better part of 10 years, along with our co-host Phil Stargell, who was really one of the originators of the broadcast. Anyway, when I was listening to Pastor Ewell talk about abortion and this type of thing, he kept bringing up Margaret Sanger's name, and I knew a little bit about her. I knew she was the head of Planned Parenthood. She established that way back in over 100 years ago. It's the American Birth Control League, and she was also as the head of Planned Parenthood, was the largest abortion provider in the country. What's interesting to note in my research about her, and there's 9 chapters in the book, by the way, and I'd like to give you a thumbnail sketch of each one. Now, there are a number of copies for sale on the table over there, and the cover price is $20, but I'm letting it go for about 15. So at least we do make a little bit of stuff to help out with the cause here. Margaret Sanger officially was opposed to abortion because, in her words, it destroyed the life of the child growing inside the mother's body. At least she acknowledged that there's actually a child growing in the mother's body. And I came across a 1959 copy of Funk and Wagnall's encyclopedia. If anybody can remember Funk and Wagnall's, they kept talking about that on the old Laughing program. And I was wondering, I was kind of curious as to what her thoughts were back then. And they were surprisingly, astonishingly far different than from what Planned Parenthood does today in her name. But she did not have to oppose abortion or promote abortion. What she wanted was sterilization. In other words, she wanted the people in question not to be able to conceive at all, which would mean having the tubes tied and the ovaries sterile. And so this basically tied into the idea of, in the second chapter of the book, which had to do with eugenics. And I'm just going to go ahead with this real quick and just give you a quick rundown of the chapters of a thumbnail sketch here. Okay, acknowledgments, okay. Okay, first of all was chapter 1, which is a short biography of Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger started out as a young woman in the late 19th century in upstate New York. She came from a large family, and unfortunately, half the back then large families were large because so many children were not making it through the woman's pregnancy. And it contributed to a lot of hardship in that, which you can understand. You want to help, that type of thing. So she wanted to that led her to become a nurse. And what she saw, her mother dying from tuberculosis and breast cancer, which is a terrible, terrible thing. One of them is as bad enough as it is. But to have two, that's an incredible double whammy. And she became very resentful of large families. And it led her to conclude that that all the world's troubles, all the world's ills were caused by large families. And in fact, before she died, she went on, I believe she went on an interview program with Chris Wallace's father, Mike Wallace. And he interviewed her, and she said that, I believe it was in this particular interview, she said that she said that, I'm trying to get the exact wording here, but the gist of it was, the most merciful thing that a large family can do to one of its infant members is to kill it. Now, her ideas on birth control back during the 19th century were pretty revolutionary, and people weren't able to get any type of information in the United States, so she had to go out of the country in order to get it. And from there, she began to formulate her whole philosophy, which was the idea that instead of having the mother get pregnant and carry it through the term, it was better that the child not be conceived in the first place. So that led her to continue on down this path. She made some really astounding statements. And she said, let me see if I can find it here. Okay. Now this is the gist of it right here, because the black population was pretty much targeted from the outset with her clinics and all that type of thing. This is how she was able to approach and con the black community into following along with her agenda. Quote, "We should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is a man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. Now, black Americans have always been the most religious, most avid churchgoers, have always been the ones to really embrace life because of the background of slavery. And Margaret Sanger developed an attitude towards minorities, blacks, Asians, immigrants, that type of thing, and calling them basically human weeds and needed eradication. That's really I don't know, my jaw just dropped. As I was researching the book here, and I came across a number of her quotes which were extremely disturbing. So that's a little bit about Margaret Sanger and what she was involved in. I believe that a person is taken in the totality of their works. Okay, we all are flawed people. We've all fallen short of the glory of God, and that type of thing is what we do with our lives, for better or worse, that defines us. Now the second chapter of my book is called A Brief History of Eugenics, and this is something Margaret Sanger was very, very involved in.
I should have told you we don't have very much time.
Okay, anyway, but eugenics is a movement to improve the human species by controlling heredity, and that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing a lot of sex selection, abortions, and this type of thing taking place. But this book is just so packed with information, and it's not in print anymore, so maybe after I die, it'll be a collector's item or something like that. So, but anyway, I just want to give you a thumbnail sketch of some of the book, the reasons I wrote it, because I'm very, very concerned about everybody who's affected, especially young black women of childbearing age are the ones that are targeted by the abortion industry, to the tune of nearly 60 million unborn babies slaughtered between 1973 and the end of Roe versus Wade. This is just horrendous to contemplate. Imagine everything that could have been done, that hasn't been done because these people aren't here. Okay. So anyway, well, thanks very much for the time. I certainly appreciate it.
I hope everyone will. You're going to stick around because you can find his books in the back. And I'm sorry to have to cut everybody short. Everybody has so much good to say. The percentage of, now I forgot the statistic. I believe the African American black population is about 15% of is that 15% of the American population?
No, this is Phil Starter. He's our host of the, I believe, the Roundtable Michigan. He can answer that question.
Okay, I believe that 50% of the abortions have been on the black population, but they are only about 50, is it 30% of the population? 13. Okay, 13%. So we're diminishing them. They are no longer the greatest minority in this country. Pastor Darren Burns, where did he go? Oh, here he comes. Okay, thank you. So Bruce will be here, and his book is available in the back. And now I guess his co-host is here, so you can talk to him later too. So I appreciate your coming. And Pastor Darren Burns from Lincoln Park. And what is your church doing to help moms?
Well, good afternoon. I'm gonna help you make up some time, so I'll be brief. I always start out things real quick with two things, a couple statements, and also a story. I always have a little story, and it'll probably make you laugh, but I like to laugh. But I entered into this conversation with this, knowing that 30 to 40% of men and women that attend church have participated in an abortion. 30 to 40%. Those are your lay people, your deacons, your leaders, your pastors, everybody. Some have talked about it, most haven't. So we have to understand that with the culture of life, and I appreciate what you're doing with the culture of life, we have to understand that these individuals have been through a trauma, some healed and some unhealed. But know that when you go to church, don't start looking and try to find the people, but you know, out of every 10 people you've talked to, 3 to 4 of them have participated in an abortion. So it changes your whole paradigm as you're looking at things, not just the people coming in. So a few years ago, I was in Arizona, and I was taking a walk through the campus of Arizona State because I was going to a function that night. When I got to the campus, there was a protest going on, a pro-life, pro-choice protest. You know, they had these pictures all up. And so I went over to the pro-life people, and I asked them, what are they doing here? I said, I don't know nothing about this stuff, so please educate me. And they told me what they were doing. So I went to the pro-choice people, and I said, what are you doing here? And what are you here? And they told me why they were there. I'm going to go through the details. So I said, okay, I have a choice. I can go to the pro-life side and stand with them and try to figure more stuff out. I can go to the pro-choice side. So I'm a pastor. So I went to the pro-choice side and just went over there and talked to them. And started asking more questions. And so I asked one question. I said, are you pro-choice or pro-abortion? They said, we're pro-choice. And this is the question I asked. If I'm pro-choice, that means that if a woman chooses life, I'll support it. Because that's the choice. And so the question is, when you look at things, are people pro-choice or are they pro-abortion? That's how I started the question. And long story short, out of all the people, I had one young lady follow me after I left the protest, because I had a great time talking to everybody. And she started asking questions. And she was not there because she was there because she just followed the crowd. So many people just follow the crowd because they don't have anybody with the right voice and the right love to help them. Hope that helps you guys out. The other thing I'm going to say is that when we talk about it in our local church, we understand that, I think it's more than protest. I think it's more than just getting up and saying things. When I tell a young lady and a young man that we want this baby to come to term, we are committing 18 plus years. So it's more than saying, hey, we want you to have a baby, we're going to give you a baby shower, we're going to applaud. But I want the church to understand we have 18 plus years to support. The church cannot be let off the hook. The Bible says that we are to take care of the widows, which is not old women that are seniors. It's any woman that doesn't have a man present in the house. We are responsible for the widows, the orphans, the children in foster care, and we're responsible for the elderly, we're responsible for the disabled. It is the church's responsibility and accountability. I also say, building this culture of life with our church and what we're going to talk about what we're doing, we also have to have collaboration for stronger churches in communities that may not have as many of these issues. We are not left off the hook for not supporting urban and inner city churches that have these issues and getting there. Because in the Bible, the church at Ephesus, the church at Philippi, supported the church at Jerusalem, and supported these smaller churches. So everybody needs to do something. So if it's not impacting your community or not impacting your local church, you need to find a church where it is impacting and spend time and effort and trying to volunteer and encourage those pastors who are really, really trying to fight the fight. And as I said to somebody, no pastor or no person in their right mind would spend 50% to 60% of their income trying to keep their church doors open for that. They're only doing it because they really care about what they're doing. So these pastors out here are struggling, they're hurting, they're trying to do it, but they're just like having a Macedonian cry, like, who's going to come over here and help us? So just keep that in mind. With that in mind, some of the things we implemented in our local church is with all of this, we are very avid supporters of foster care. So our young people that come in, many of them are coming through aging out of foster care. And of course, we all know, like maybe you don't know, that in 12 months, almost 90% of these kids are homeless when they age out. What is the church going to do to respond? You've got to find creative ways to support. And the challenge of it is sometimes, and I'm like, we don't always have the financial resources and the means, so we got to get really, really creative to find ways to house these kids, finding partnerships and things like that. Even though I feel sometimes other churches can immediately step in and help us, we don't always have that help, but we still cannot walk away from our accountability. So we really work with our kids that are aging out of foster care. Our Embrace Grace program operates where, of course, we work with young women. My wife is doing a phenomenal job of young women with unexpected pregnancies and making sure that we can walk these women to term. And the young lady at the table today really gave me a good way to put it. We try to make sure that these young women have another extended family. Sometimes the biological family or the biological father is not really supportive, but they need a family to know somebody's there. It gets back to what you can do to help churches is hey, we're coming down just to be a part of your group, without, not necessarily asking any money. Just come down there and be a part of these girls' lives. And I'll give you another example. So a young lady, she needed her car fixed, and she didn't have a car for transportation to get to work. So what we did is we did raise the money to do some, wasn't just our church, outside to fix the car. The problem is, who's going to take the car to get fixed? She's got to go to work. So we get her to work. So as a pastor, somebody has to go to her house, pick her car up, take it to the mechanic, make sure it gets done, and then we got to get it back to her. That's just a volunteer to do the work. No money involved. Maybe you got to get somebody to pick you up from it, but there are ways we can support to help these young women get to their goals. So we have the Embrace Grace. We then have an Embrace Life program where we have young women that have now had a baby. How do they embrace the new life of motherhood? In conjunction with that, we've got our Embrace Legacy, which goes on with these young men who are now fathers, because I don't believe letting those daddies off the hook. I'm sorry, I don't. And working with them to help them become the best dads they can do. We also are now in the process of implementing another curriculum. It's called the Image of God. Through Stand for Life, which basically is like, which is very similar to what you're doing with Culture of Life. And we hope to bring this Culture of Life curriculum that's been brought to us to create this from the time our kids are really small to understand that I am a valued person in the eyes of God and changing this issue. So these are some of the things that we do. So I just want to leave you with this. Find a way to support. If your church doesn't actively have that program or you have programs, find another church to partner with in some of the more challenged areas just to provide support so we can show these young girls that their family goes beyond the parish that they may be a part of. Hope that makes sense to everybody. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Yeah, we had three. Okay. All right. And then Joe's ready with the raffle. I wrote it all out because I didn't want to ramble. So, the battle to defend life. As we're working toward, we want to move the culture forward. We want to move it lifeward, upward. Okay. The battle, especially at the beginning and end of life, is more than a cultural battle. It's a spiritual battle, and we've heard that from every speaker today. Genesis tells us man was created in the image and likeness of God. The Bible tells that story. God led his people. They saw the miracles. They received the 10 Commandments. They were brought out of slavery into the promised land, and still they failed. And Psalm 106 tells us they served their idols, which became a snare to them. They sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the demons. They poured out innocent blood, the blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. Thus they became unclean by their acts, and played the harlot in their doings. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against his people. And God is merciful. He has forgiven and given us a second chance, again and again and again. The church that Christ founded gives us guidance and has the answers to life's biggest questions. But those questions are often ignored today. And this comes from Gaudium et Spes. It was written during Vatican II in the 1960s, but to me it rings true still so much today. What is the meaning and value of all this activity of life? Where are the efforts of individuals and communities finally leading us? The church is the guardian of the deposit of God's word, what Pastor Darren told us, from which are drawn the principles of the religious and moral order. We're talking about morality. The Christian message places a stricter obligation to work toward building up the world and for the good of their fellow men. And I see that all of us here recognize that. And then it continues. So that was in the 1960s. Recent popes in our lifetime have spoken loudly in defense of the sanctity of human life. Pope Benedict XVI put it succinctly in 2011 when he addressed the German Bundestag. We are made in his image from the moment of conception. The fundamental human right, the presupposition of every other right, is the right to life itself. This is true of life from the moment of conception until its natural end. Those who do not respect the gift of God's creation of the human person as the apex of creation have slowly co-opted the power of the state, whether through communism, socialism, even democracy, to undermine the family and the authority of parents as the primary educators of their children. Public education has undermined the authority of parents, even providing meals for the children, so that they don't realize that the responsibilities are taken away from parents. Children don't rely on their parents. What kind of message is that giving? Sexual education, removed from the family, distorts the natural and beauty complementarity of marriage and procreation. Husbands and wives make sacrifices to care for children, or they should. Fathers should be providing and protecting. Mothers nurturing children to create strong families as the foundation building blocks of society. Instead, it has become twisted and deformed with pornography and all that is entangled with homosexuality and now the fallacy of transgenderism. It's all related, and all of it is a part of what we are fighting. We each can do our own separate parts. All that leads to and encourages sex outside of marriage, which leads to abortion. To save babies, we must save mothers, which Emmanuel explained is the mission of Guadalupe workers. Men need to be encouraged with role models to live up to their responsibilities. Thank you, Pastor Darren. The best way to eliminate abortion is for children to be conceived in sacramental marriages. Strengthening the natural marriage bonds of men and women desiring to raise a family with God's blessing will strengthen our communities, our state, and our country. The election of President Trump and our pro-life representatives Riley Linting, Jamie Thompson, Jim DeSena is because of the hard work by ordinary people who've had enough. How do we help the pendulum of cultural chaos swing to common sense and a culture that respects and defends life? It takes time, courage, prayer, perseverance to impact the culture. It is happening now. We're part of it. Choose something small that you can do to make an impact in your circle of influence. Right to Life of Michigan and affiliates, of which we are one, of about 80, many have consolidated around the state. Working together multiplies your impact. Belonging to and working with Right to Life of Michigan is very effective, and Upper-Downriver Right to Life would be happy to have you join us and become more active. It takes leadership, money, awareness, and action to make an impact. And Right to Life of Michigan's been around more than 50 years and has the experience and the impact. At last Tuesday's Right to Life of Michigan's Legislative Day, I attended with my husband. Not only did we hear the update from our pro-life lobbyist, which Right to Life of Michigan does have a lobbyist, she works with the pro-life caucus, and helps to craft the legislation, and tries to look at the long-term effects. So that's an effective part. And then if you signed up for the emails from Right to Life of Michigan, you can always check the website, which is so simple, rtl.org, and look around. There's always information, but if you sign up, you'll get, I don't know if they do it every week. There might be one email each week to update you. It's very helpful to keep you informed. And I know we all get so many things, and even if you can't read it all the time, read the headlines. At the legislative day, not only did we hear from the lobbyists and some elected representatives, but we also heard the statewide winner of our high school oratory contest. And we had our representative there. MJ was the chairman of our Downriver oratory contest for high school students. His was a very interesting speech, and it will be reported in the next issue of the newspaper. So if you have a membership, which there's a membership form in your program in the part of the newsletter, you'll get to hear or see excerpts of it. But what he convinced us was that we should talk to strangers, befriend people who don't necessarily think the way we do. And when you become friends, then they become more open. I thought it was very interesting, and from a junior in high school, I thought it was a very well put together and timely, thoughtful speech. He convinced us that talking to strangers, becoming friends, showing that pro-lifers are not nasty or mean, and that we actually care, can change minds and hearts, and which is what it takes to change the culture. You can find more at rtl.org and the upcoming issue of the Right to Life of Michigan newspaper, which you have a sample in your packet. And I was going to show the ads that Right to Life of Michigan has put out, but the TV that worked last week didn't work today. They have a number of 30-second ads, which Planned Parenthood has mimicked because they saw them in use last year, and they have mimicked them to promote Planned Parenthood. Right to Life of Michigan needs $1 million to get them back on the air, on the internet, through Facebook and all the ads that go on social media. And they're about halfway to their goal. Oh, I was going to pass. There are envelopes, Ed, on the table in front of you. So I was going to pass, if we can pass them around, Marcy, maybe? They're to the left end of the table. Yeah, there you go. That's the ones. If you can pass them around. If you can make a donation to Right to Life of Michigan, we'll put the stamp on it and send it in. They will appreciate it. It will help to get these messages out to help moms. When they did it last year, it increased the calls to the local pregnancy centers that go through the 800-517 helpline, so that more moms were able to get the information they needed and the help they needed so that they didn't feel desperation and choose abortion. So you can see those ads if you go to rtl.org/videos and take a look for yourself. I'm sorry we can't show you, and to compare it with what Planned Parenthood has out there. I never see them on TV myself because I just don't watch enough or see the right channels, I guess. Anyway, and many of you signed up for the periodic emails updates. Thank you very much. There's a whole list in your packet of dates. It's a half-size sheet, has upcoming events on it. It's on the back of the oratory information. And I'd like to invite you, please participate in those local events with us, especially upcoming Southgate Heritage Days. We need people to walk in the parade. That's June 7th. The golf outing on Grosse Ile. If you're a golfer, Southern Downriver Right to Life is sponsoring that one. June 21st, Our Life Walk and Pro-Life Picnic. Even if you can't do the walk, you don't have to do the whole 2 miles. And if you can't do the walk, come to the picnic. Share the camaraderie. We'll be at the log cabin at Bishop Park, right on the Detroit River. It'll be a lovely day, June 21st, Saturday. The Trenton Summer Festival needs volunteers with Southern Downriver Right to Life. Wyandotte Parade. We show that we like to have a large group of people at the parade in Wyandotte. And if you're interested, talk to us. We need Southern Downrivers in parades. Memorial Day, they even have parades. Wyandotte Street Fair, we always need volunteers to help. Our Focus on Life dinner is September 18th, and we'll have President of the Population Research Institute speaking. Oops, I'm overtime. And it will be awesome at the Grecian Center again this year. Please add to your list, September 25th is the Right to Life of Michigan State Convention. It's always interesting speakers. We would love to have you come and be a part of our delegation to attend the convention. And the Life Chain, October 6th, the first Sunday in October every year. If you've never been in the Life Chain before, you can have one close to where you are, or you can join one that already has been going on for years. We need to promote it more. And those signs, I think Dennis is right. They've been using the same sign, abortion kills children, since it started more than 30 years ago. Abortion kills children. Just that one simple statement of fact that can open minds, because when the media and people just say abortion so casually, it's just a medical thing, right? So, but there are other signs as well. And Michigan March for Life, November 6th. So buses are being arranged, so you don't have to drive individually to Lansing to participate, and that will be a great opportunity. And the reason it's November 6th is because that was when we lost the, when abortion took over in the state, when we lost Prop 3. So thank you, because in a few more years, our impact will be felt.
Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast and share episodes. We need your help.